Good morning. Welcome. Or good afternoon. Let me know where you are listening from, or maybe it's nighttime for you. It is morning for me, and I have my morning coffee. This is my Beyond English Fluency live sessions. So, welcome. It's really good to have you here and to join you again. I go live every single Tuesday. So I am looking forward to today's session and what I have to share with you. Let me know where you are listening from and if you can hear me okay. Welcome. If you're listening on YouTube, hello, or on LinkedIn, I'm live on both platforms, so welcome. I know for some of you, you're not able to watch on LinkedIn, so I also give you the option on YouTube. Nice. Okay, so welcome. So I wanted to really get into today's session. And if you've just joined, hello. Let me know that you're here by saying hi. And I've been going live every single Tuesday for the last few weeks, and that is something I'm going to continue. And the last few weeks, we've covered many different topics. So last week, I really spoke about how to handle feelings of failure and my own story of learning Spanish at university and then going back to zero and starting again. And because my Spanish was not at the level of someone that graduated, and I shared about that story and how different setbacks can make us feel like we have failed and what we can do about that. Okay, I'm getting your messages now. Looks like we have Mimi. Hi, Mimi, in Mexico. Very nice. I'm in Mexico too, so very cool to have you here. It is 9 a.m. where I am in Mexico, and I have my iced coffee. So, okay. Hi, Dara. Great to have you here. Welcome. We have Douglas in Brazil. Oh, Doug. Okay, Doug. Hello. Okay. Perfect. It looks like we have, is it Tirupati? Hello from India. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. You have to let me know the pronunciation. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are listening from. So I was saying that I go live every single Tuesday. And last week, we really looked at the difficult setbacks and how setbacks can really stop you from making progress in your career. And sometimes it's not that obvious. It's on a subconscious level. It's deep inside. And what that might look like is you might be a little bit afraid to speak up in a meeting, or you might not put yourself in situations that will really help your career. And sometimes you put yourself in situations that might actually be harmful to your career or hold you back from your full potential. So that was last week. Now this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of things. The first one is all about being proactive and how being proactive is really key in what I've seen in your job success. So if you don't know me, welcome. I'm Gemma, and I'm a linguist, English teacher, and communication coach. And I have over 14 years of experience helping professionals achieving communication clarity and confidence. So with the Fluent Speaker Success Path, I help you really in transforming your English speaking fluency, but also your communication skills, because it is beyond English. And it's more than just knowing the language to really not just survive at work, but really being able to thrive in your professional career. So do you ever feel like, do you start developing a skill that you need for the future now? Or, for example, it could be a communication skill. Like maybe when you think about leadership, I would like to be a manager one day. Or will you wait for that opportunity to be offered to you and then try and figure it out? So this is what I'm talking about here. Now, over the last few years, I've been working especially closely with designers and those that are tech professionals. And I found that those who are the most likely to grow and develop their skills and really not fail in their career, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment, are those who are proactively developing their skills. And they are the most likely to make the best case, whether that's for promotion or more likely that they will be offered more opportunities in different countries. So it seems like quite an obvious statement, but it's not just about developing what is needed right now. It's also about anticipating what skills you're going to need to develop and what really potential issues will you face when the opportunities come up. So I say this because I had a situation with a client I worked with. Now, when I first met her, she's from Mexico, and she was working for a company. She just started a new role when we started working together. And she came to me because she had a good level of English, but the role was slightly different. It was slightly out of her comfort zone. It was very technical. And she had a technical background, but in this particular role, it was a little bit more technical than she was used to. And she thought, okay, I need to maybe understand more technical vocabulary, or I have to speak with stakeholders. So I want to feel more comfortable doing that, just like I know I can in Spanish. So we started to work together, and quickly through our sessions, we realized, or she realized, that it wasn't just about the language, that actually in this new position, because it was so technical, it was learning a new culture and a company culture. And she had to communicate with people in many different countries, people in China, in India, and many different countries. And she found that it was actually very challenging. And there are a few reasons for it. And she realized she was given this great opportunity, but she wasn't quite ready for it. And yes, we had, the time to really support her, but it was like she had jumped into the ocean and she'd only just started swimming. And what happened is she started to face some really difficult situations in her job. And one of those situations was related to feedback. Now, luckily, when we worked together, that is something that we covered, is not just how you can deliver feedback, which is very important, but also how you can handle people that are really terrible at delivering feedback. And to be honest, that is even harder than it is learning how to deliver the feedback. Because learning to deliver the feedback, yes, there are actually some different methods that you can follow. And that is the first step, is being able to, explain and really communicate your ideas. That can be challenging. But what is more challenging is if you're in a situation where someone gives you bad feedback, or someone on your team, or they deliver that in a very poor way. Managing that, I have seen to be more challenging. And I'd love to see what you think. Have you found it more challenging to deliver feedback, or do you think it's more challenging to receive the feedback, and then how to manage and deal with the difficult feedback? Love to see what you think. What do you think is more challenging? Now, definitely both of them are challenging, but I would say from my experience, we might think, oh, I find it more difficult to be able to explain or to be able to approach a conversation, but actually it's more related to how we receive feedback and how we can handle those situations of different aspects that might come up. So yeah, I'd love to see what you say about that. Let me just have some coffee. Like I said, it is morning here. Okay. Yeah, so let me just share a little bit more about what happened. So what happened was, like I said, I was working with this lady, and we started working together, and I really shared some different tools to handle these difficult situations. And like I said, one of those difficult situations is not just being able to give feedback, but also how we can adapt to feedback that we might be given. Now, feedback is definitely, if you are working in design, critique is a big part of your job and something that you learn to, you have to develop as part of your career. Okay, Deborah says, in my opinion, offering is more challenging. Yeah. And that's interesting. I guess it depends on what stage you are in your career, because I should say that she was working in her career. Maybe she had just been doing, she was 3 years in, a couple of years in. So she was relatively new to her career. And I think as you go through, it becomes more challenging maybe to deliver feedback as you maybe reach a more higher level in a position. But in the beginning, what I've noticed, the beginning of your career, it's actually how to handle feedback that's given. Yeah, so we have Betty. For me, it's definitely a little more complicated to give feedback because I must take the words that I need to use and be careful to not hurt feelings. Yes, definitely. And there's two issues with how we deliver feedback. So the way that the reason why it's so difficult to give feedback, but also to receive feedback, and what you're saying is you're worried about the other person and how they will react, what kind of reaction they will have, which is very, it's a good thing to be thinking about that, because it's a very real reaction of how to navigate a difficult conversation. So you said, for me, it's difficult because of the language you need to use, and you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. So there's two types of feedback that can cause issues. The first one is that, for example, you use what is the sandwich method. And the sandwich method is not one I would particularly encourage to use. And the reason is, and the sandwich method is when you say something very nice, like, okay, you've been you're really great designer, but you handled this situation really badly and really poorly, and you're now on probation, but we really think that you are very good at doing this. So you're starting out with something very nice, you're giving the critique, and then you're saying something nice again. Now, the reason why there's an issue with this feedback, and there's a lot of research to back this up, and that is that if we don't feel like we're receiving feedback, it can be so indirect, we don't feel like we're receiving any feedback. What happens is it's hard to take that on and to then be able to implement that feedback. The reason that we give feedback is to either, one, help someone to grow and develop, or they did something well and we want to help them to continue to do that good thing. So it's like reinforcing that behavior. If they did something really well or really positive and they have a good strength, we would give them some feedback that is positive. But the reason is that we would like to see them do that thing again, if it's a positive feedback. Now, if it's a negative feedback, if we're giving critique, we usually want to redirect them so they understand a different way of doing it, or maybe finding a different way of approaching a situation. So when we give feedback that is too indirect, it can feel like there's not that conversation of, okay, I'm going to proactively do something about this, I need to change. And if it's too indirect, it's like, okay, and you might just forget about it. And then what will happen is you won't make any changes, or you won't be able to support that person in making any changes. Now, if it's too direct, which what Betty said is that I need to use and be careful not to hurt their feelings. And what happens when we are too direct with our language, it can feel like attack. Like it can feel like we're being attacked. And it happens because there's a part of our brain which is always scanning for any social threats. And what happens is it's like an alarm that will go off and I hear something negative, and instantly as humans we will focus on that negative information because that is a threat. And what happens is we then focus in on that threat, and we can either back away or we can react. And we can react by, it's that flight or fight mode. We can either not say anything and just freeze. And if you've ever had to deliver feedback to someone, you might have seen that reaction before, where it's their body starts to tense up and they might be really upset. They might even cry, or they can get very angry, or they might start to say no and become defensive. So we have to be very careful in how we deliver our feedback. So I think it is a very good point, because we can have those two reactions. So we want to find a way to deliver feedback that, and it helps to be aware of this, because being aware of how people react and how you might react can then help us in navigating. Okay, it looks like we have Megolo-san, nice, from Hayati. I just joined. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's good to have you here. It looks like we have people from many different countries today. So I was just talking a little bit about some of the difficult situations that we face. And one of them was how we handle feedback and how we can, is it more challenging to deliver the feedback? Which, yes, it is challenging. And I shared a couple of reasons why it's challenging to deliver feedback, but also why it can be so challenging to handle when someone is really bad at giving you feedback, or there is a difficult situation. So there was another situation that happened very recently to my client, and she's a very talented UX designer. And she was really, the beginning of her career, really, she'd been doing it for a few years, but she had a lot of goals to grow. And she said, I want to go into management. I would really like to have more opportunities, and especially to grow my professional career. I want to explore international opportunities. But she did face really a lack of confidence and, I guess, issues with being concise and assertive in her language. So it did mean, because of that, it was quite difficult at times, or challenging, to negotiate or communicate effectively. But I did see a lot of potential in her, and I knew that she had that missing ingredient. Now, you were listening earlier, that missing ingredient is being proactive. She knew that she was here and she wanted to get to here. So she knew the ingredients here, but she just needed some help. And that missing ingredient is being proactive. She wasn't working as a manager or as in a leadership role, but that is something that she wanted. She knew that if she was going to be the best leader, eventually, she needed to put the work in now. And she was really very driven to do that. She just needed some of the guidance and the tools to really navigate some of the challenges that she knew would face. If she could handle them now, then she was more prepared when the time did come to be able to manage a team. So when we worked, and she was working in an agency. Now, I don't know here if anybody works in an agency, but how you handle yourself and assert yourself can determine the types of projects you get to work on. Because every time in an agency, you need to have an interview with the stakeholders to see if it's a good fit, to see, and if it's not, they will say no, and then they will find someone else on the team to work on that project. So it's almost like having mini interviews every few months when you start a new project. And because of that, it's definitely helps you to grow, but it can mean if you aren't able to handle yourself very well and communicate yourself very well, you aren't given the best projects, or maybe international projects like she wanted. So when we worked together, I really shared how to handle some of these difficult situations. And that's things like the different communication strategies that I shared, for example, the example of delivering feedback and how people might react. So that's just one, but there's many difficult situations of how to handle pushback and things like how to, if you're given if asked a difficult question, how do you react? How can you explain yourself and defend your decisions? So we worked together on these different ways to handle these situations. But interestingly, what happened while we were working together, she really had this pivotal moment on a new project. So she had actually transitioned, and the role was giving her, luckily, like I said, she was very proactive. She really wanted to go into leadership. And she's only been working at this company for a couple of years, but they had offered her a new project where she would be in management and she would be taking on more leadership responsibilities. So she was very excited for that challenge, to see what would happen. And interestingly, just a few weeks before we had a lesson, I had a really great discussion about while we cannot change how others deliver feedback, we can change how we react to it. So what happened is, we had a really great session, and she was able to understand how she might have reacted to feedback, and how some feedback we have to sit like a sieve, like with pasta or rice, and we have to search for, what is the good pasta, or what is the good information. Because usually when we want to give feedback, there is some truth to it, even if it can be very hurtful. And usually, like Betty shared, we don't want to have, we don't want to hurt people's feelings, but sometimes that can come across in our language, and also our style of communicating. And that can be other reasons, because of our cultural background, or just the way that we are used to sharing feedback. Maybe we've not been taught how to share feedback. So she had this situation where she realized that with feedback, she did need to listen. And there are some steps, actually, just like there's steps to deliver feedback. There are some steps on how we can really handle when you are being given negative feedback, especially. But also, if someone says to you, good job, like I said, the best feedback is the type of feedback that will redirect you or will support you in doing the good thing again and again. So if someone says to you, good job, that's not that helpful, because it's, well, what was good? So how can you grow in your career if you're just being told, good job? So we need to be able to navigate and react to these situations to get more information. Now, that's not always easy to do. We don't always want to hear, and sometimes people would just say good job and they don't really mean it. So it's being able to handle situations like that. So thankfully, we had this session, and she was able to really understand, the different ways of navigating feedback. And then a few weeks later, she had some issues, and she was working on this team, the management team, and she had a few issues that were completely out of her control. She had some issues with some technology, and she just wasn't able to complete something by the deadline. Now, she did communicate that there was an issue, and she was always communicating, and sharing, and really, like I said, she was a very proactive person. So she was sharing with her team the situation, and that she had an issue. And what happened is, the manager or the person she was working with, the lead, didn't really give her any feedback. But what happened is, they gave some feedback to her manager, And it turned out that that feedback was extremely negative and almost detrimental to her career. But luckily, when she was able to speak with her managers about the situation, she really had the strategies to handle that situation. And she shared with me how if we hadn't worked together and had our sessions, especially on feedback, it was a very timely topic, that she didn't know the outcome or what would have happened. And she said maybe it could have meant that I would lose my job, because she was given a situation that was very challenging. And it was, she was like, I admit there were mistakes, but I was able to, share and really open to growing. But her team didn't really handle delivering the feedback. And it could have been, in the instance while it was happening. That's why feedback is so important, to be timely. If there is an issue, you have to talk about it right away. And we have to share, there's, if you need help, what can I do? And really, it's on everybody to be, supportive of your team. And I know that doesn't always happen. So because of that, she really, if she had hesitated and wasn't proactive, hadn't decided to develop her communication skills, she may still, she might have not even said yes to the leadership opportunity and the the growth. But secondly, she might have said yes, and then she didn't have the tools to handle that, which could have really, as I spoke about last week, if you have a setback like that, you can see it two ways. You can see it as a setback. You can see it as, I'm never going to be a leader. Why did I even try? And you have the negative voice. So why did I even, maybe it's too early in my career. I shouldn't have accepted this opportunity. Or maybe it could be even worse. Like she said, if I hadn't had the tools, I honestly don't know what would have happened. Maybe I would have lost my job. It could have been really terrible. Or you can see it as a different way of, this was a difficult situation, but I had the tools, and I now see that, yes, it was a setback in my career. Yes, it was challenging. But if this ever happens in the future, I know how to handle this. And seeing it as a growth, really like as the gain, what did I gain from this experience? And it's repositioning that. And it's not just, she may still be continuing to struggle with her professional growth, but really it's a few things here that were really important, and that's being proactive. Also, when you do have difficult situations that happen, and they happen to everybody, is how do we handle them? And then when they do happen, how can we really adapt to them, take that information from them that is, okay, is this logically true? Is this your opinion of me? Or is this really what happened? And did this person give specific detail? Which they didn't. They said, you were always, you didn't do this. So they start to blame. So it's really seeing, what here can be taken as fact, what can be true, and what is just someone's opinion. And what is also from that, can I now take to improve? She's realized that, yes, there are still areas of my growth that I want to focus on and I want to develop. So you can really see the situation two ways of, this is a big setback, or you can see it as an opportunity to grow and to take, and even if it was a bad situation, how can we take that to then grow in our career? And fortunately, she did see it as, a positive, and was able to move on from that, and to take an awful situation and be able to handle it in a calm and confident way. So when you do receive feedback that is negative, you can reframe your perspective and take it on constructively rather than being demoralized. My client, she was able to channel that feedback to then improve her skills and really refine her work. And over time, I know that now she's been through that situation. If anything comes up, situations like that will build your confidence. And yes, she had some, anxiety around it before, but situations like that, being in that, the only way, courage builds your confidence, being in these difficult situations. So when you do develop and become proactive, it's not going to be easy. There are going to still be challenges, but you will have the tools to develop these challenges, just like my client did. And it's really embracing, the guidance and adopting that right mindset of how you see these difficult challenges and how you handle them. And having that right mindset will then help you to grow, but ultimately thrive in your career. Okay, let's see. Oh my God, I'm currently writing a feedback for a translation. Okay. How is it going? How do you feel about it? So I'd love to know, have you ever had a situation like that where someone maybe gave some difficult feedback, just like my client did, and what happened? Or Miguel says, is writing some feedback right now for a translation. Yeah. So like I said, when things like that happen, it's about being proactive. So for you, you have to think about, well, what are my goals? What would I really like? And I think the difference here with my client is she knew her goals. She knew exactly what she wanted. She was very career driven. And it was very clear, okay, I want to get here, and to get to having more international opportunities or maybe taking on more leadership roles, I know that there are still some skills missing. And even though I might not have a leadership opportunity for another year, it could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, it could even be a few weeks' time. Now, for her, it was just a few weeks later, which does seem to happen when we are focused on, I want to have more leadership roles or something very clear. It can come to you much sooner. Just like the other client I worked with, who she just started her new position and she was in an international environment. Now, the challenges for her was not only did she have to navigate using English, but she also had to navigate, she wasn't quite ready in the technical side of things. So she had two very difficult challenges. And one thing is, it's also important to work on, your hard skills, of course, of understanding your job and the technical side of things. But it's also equally important to develop the soft skills to be able to handle these situations. Now, luckily for my client, that she was able to, she knew her job very well. She was able to do that, but it was navigating the leadership and the difficult aspects of the project. Now, if it can be too many things to handle, it might be that you have to find a different job, and it can feel like you're almost stepping back. You have an opportunity to work in an international company. You realize, okay, not only I'm not quite ready with my English, I'm also not quite ready with all of my technical skills. And I've definitely seen that happen before. So it's not to ignore the technical side and to focus there as well, but it's also to be, what is the gap? What is missing for me? What is it that I need to work on to be able to reach the career? Or what is it that I want to improve on? And sometimes it's not just about your career. Sometimes it is, I want to work, I like my job, but maybe I would like to transition and live abroad. I want to go and live with my family in a different country. And sometimes it's not just professional. It can be that I want to get a visa to live somewhere else, or I want to maybe travel and have, or even better relationships with my colleagues. Can be other reasons. It's not always, I want to be a leader, I want to be a manager. Okay, so yeah, that's the main ideas that I wanted to share today. Is really about how being proactive and really seeing what is it, having very clear goals, but being proactive. Once you are proactive, and proactive is really, when you can control a situation by making things happen rather than waiting for them. And then when they happen, you're then reacting to the situation, which is what my first client was doing that I told you about. She already had the situation of working in a new environment, and it felt like she was constantly reacting to the different situations that came up. Now, for her, ultimately, she ended up leaving that company, and she's now in a position where she is very happy, but she had to react rather, I met her a little bit too late. So with my other clients, she was really able to be proactive, have the skills and have the tools. So when there were challenging situations, which there will be, she was able to, instead of react to them, she was proactive and was able to handle them much better. Because if she hadn't had the tools, she would have been reacting of maybe when she first met with her manager to discuss, and she might have, she would have had that natural reaction that we have of perhaps feeling angry, or she might have said something that she didn't want to say, or, who knows what would have happened. But it would have been a very different situation if she hadn't had those tools. So being proactive is about really, what are the missing tools for me? What kind of guidance do I need? And also, where do I want to go? And it doesn't have to be a very clear, I want to have, an exact goal, but just a direction of, I would like to, have more leadership opportunities, or maybe I would like more international chances to speak, work on international projects with colleagues, maybe in English-speaking countries, maybe in the US or Canada or UK or whatever you would like. So yes, that's what I wanted to share today. I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything that they can share about their experience. So typically I go live every single Tuesday, usually for around 45 minutes. So it's been about 40 minutes now. I know one person, well, I've had a few people, because I called this a coffee session, a coffee chat. And a coffee chat might be a little bit confusing because there's coffee. I have my coffee, but it's not, unfortunately, I can't see you or hear you, but that might be good for you because you don't want to speak. So I can't see you, no one can see you or can hear you, but we can see your messages. I had some people who were confused because I can, for example, I can show your dog, I can show I could show your message, but I can't see you and hear you. And even though it's a chat, it's just me talking and communicating with the chat. Yeah. Okay. So like I said, the key ingredients here that I've seen, the missing ingredients, is developing that skill in a way of being proactive, or that mindset, that way of handling situations, of being proactive. So, and really I see that as a compound effect. And I know that proactivity and being proactive is really tied closely to taking initiative. And when we are proactive, we're taking action and we're improving ourselves before it's even necessary. And I know as humans, we aren't naturally the best long-term planners. Our instinct is to get the reward right away or resist doing something now because it's hard, it's painful, and we prefer instant gratification. We want the rewards now. We don't want to think about the rewards later. So, and research shows that, as humans, we will always consistently opt for something that's more immediate than the rewards in the future. You might have seen the different research that is carried out on children, and they give the child a plate and maybe there's some different sweets, some candies, or some chocolate. And they say, you have to wait until I leave the room and come back. And when I come back, if you don't touch the sweeties, you don't touch the chocolate, we will give you a better reward. But you will find that most children can't help themselves. They will eat them or they will touch them because we want the reward right now. We want the instant gratification. And that is part of being human. Our instinct is, I want the reward now. But if you just wait a little bit, they know that they could have had something even bigger or even better. But as humans, we don't like to wait. But if you've read Compound Effect, which I'm sure you probably have, Compound Effect, it explains that most people would rather have $1 million, £1 million, £1 million today than if I said to you, you can have 1 penny or 1 cent doubled every day for a month. You're like, well, yeah, of course, I want $1 million now. But it explains in that book, actually, if you do the math, 1p doubled every single day for a month is multiple millions. People can't wait a whole month. So we want things now rather than later when it comes to, job success and opportunities. It really works in a similar way. So instead of waiting to develop, people will focus on other things right now because they think, yeah, that's a problem for future me. So I do see that. Okay. Jocelyn said, use the feedback that is given to help us keep going, drive us to our objective. That's it. And I know I say this in a way that seems relatively simple. I know it's not a simple thing to do, but yes, it is about the feedback that we're given. How can we use this to then help us reach our ultimate goal? And like I said, feedback is painful, but it's how we can really navigate that and what we can do with that. But yes, I'm glad that you're able to take that from today's session. Doug said, a key realization is that any feedback, including both positive and negative, is valuable in sharing data and facts. That's it. And if it's not valuable, it's completely okay to question. Of course, if you're in a good situation to do that, in a good place, if you're having a meeting with your manager and you're able to, they say, well done on that project. You might say, oh, yeah, I'm really curious. I would like to, know what exactly do you feel that I did well? And having a discussion about it. Was there one particular thing? And especially if you say, what is the one thing? Because if you say, can you give me some feedback? Most people will be like, I don't know, I need some time. But if you say maybe, what is one thing that you feel I did well? What is one thing maybe I didn't do so well? And then asking for some information about that. That can also be, if you're not always given very thorough feedback, if it's quite vague. And that includes if it's good, like, well done, nice job, good presentation. Or if it's negative, like, yeah, I don't need to give the examples, but if that ever happens, it's, well, what is it that I did well? What is one thing that you see as a strength, or one thing that you would like to see me do again? And then you can ask them for some information. And remember, just because they share that, it might be, well, I feel, and you also have to listen for words like I feel, or in my opinion, or I think you did this really well. That is someone's opinion. And it's really, what is someone's opinion? And really, what is the fact? So that's the same when you're giving feedback. It's, I don't feel that you'd handled this very well. That's not very helpful. Maybe they didn't, but what is the evidence that you have that they didn't handle something very well? So it's always looking for the data and the specific situation. Well, you didn't handle this very well because, and then giving the exact reason of, you are always late. Okay, but was I really late? You need to, maybe I was 1 minute late to sign in, or consistently, you on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you were 20 minutes late to the meetings, or for example. So it's really looking at the evidence behind the feedback as well. Yeah, but I'm glad you had that realization. And we have Taha. Hi, Taha. Great to have you here. I am just finishing up, so we'll have to say goodbye very soon. But let me know if you do have any questions, if there's been any takeaways, if you're listening and catching the replay. Hello. And let me know if you have any questions, or if there's any kind of takeaways that you've had from today's discussion. It's always a lot of fun sharing and having you here. So thank you for joining. And like I said, I go live every single Tuesday. I will be live again next week. I'm really looking forward to seeing you here. So it will be at the same time. I will be going live on Tuesday. And also it is August now, so happy August. If you are, I don't know if you have any plans for the summer or for the winter, wherever you are. I know in the south, in Brazil, for example, you have winter now. So do you have any holidays? Yes. And so like I said, let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you all very soon. Next week, I do have something very exciting coming. So if you are a designer, and if you are working in the tech industry, whether that is as a designer or a design professional or working in tech, and if you're facing any challenges with your English speaking fluency or communication at work, and you want to hear how I can support you, send me a message. I love hearing from you, and I will see you all next week. Take care. See you later. Bye.